Hello everyone and welcome to a special ranking of every single Mario Kart World track. Mario Kart World is getting close to a month old now, and as such I have had some time to play and experience each track, so I can give my full thoughts on which are the best and which are fucking Koopa Beach. Now, as for the $1 million question, is this game worth $80? Dude, I don't fucking know. I don't think any game should be above $70, but here we are. Mario Kart World is the most different game in this series thus far due to its large interconnected open world. So as a result, the maps are bigger, some returning are reimagined with a ton of new options to match the game's controls and mechanics, and it is really fun actually. There are not many tracks here I don't enjoy, but even with that being said, I'll be giving my honest thoughts and opinions on each track and its placement to give a fair statement. Finally, I will be bringing up that certain tracks have different variations as they show up in Grand Prix multiple times, so as a result, I'm only going to be ranking their versus mode counterparts with the typical 3-lap structure. Also, I'm not going to be ranking any intermission tracks because yeah, 200 plus tracks that all feature very similar gameplay doesn't sound too fun. So with that, time to start the ranking. Number 30. With 30 tracks in this new entry of Mario Kart, you would think that they would pick out the best retro tracks, and honestly, they did a pretty good job with their choices, apart from like 3 of them. And on the bottom, what can I really say about Koopa Troopa Beach? I mean, I would have thought that they would bring back Koopa Beach from N64, which wasn't outstanding, but still had some variety compared to Baby Park's older brother over here. But like, literally, what can I say about Koopa Troopa Beach in this game? This damn track is so short that they had to give it an extra 2 laps just to have it on par with the other tracks in terms of how long it takes to complete it. And yet, it really is just a loop that you could essentially just drift around the entire time. Like, I'm not gonna say that there isn't a charm to the simplistic fun of a track like this, but this also just does such a terrible job of showing out the new tricks and mechanics of this game. I'm talking no rails to grind on, no walls to drive on, and there's no place you can really get an advantage, except for one small hill you can boost jump with a mushroom for a shortcut. There isn't really much here, and as such, it makes for such a boring track that they didn't even try to reimagine it very much. But hey, at least the remix is really good. Number 29, Starview Peak. Nintendo really said, Rosalina's Ice World, but let's make it bad. And for anyone who isn't aware, Rosalina's Ice World is like the perfect track to define as mid. So why does Starview Peak sound so much worse? Well, just cause it's nothing! Not to say that there isn't any variety, because hey, the structure and visual and places you drive on give such an interesting looking track, and then you play it. Like, damn Nintendo, I didn't realize that what a good Mario Kart track is needing is less fun because it's so damn boring! Like, for the majority of this, there is not any variety with the gameplay because yes, there are rails, and yes, you drive on water in like such a big boring straightaway with small turns. I find the main enjoyment and excitement comes from trying to hit the various boosters, but when you aren't, I mean, hell, just looking at the layout shows a whole lot of nothing in a game that can make simple turns into such an insane opportunity for tricks and shortcuts, and there's just none of that here. Number 28. Desert Hills. Am I the only one who thinks that the desert tracks in Mario Kart have always just been the least interesting? Well, I'd say they brought back a very underwhelming one, as Desert Hills on DS was at least interesting theming-wise, being more focused on Mario 3 references, and I like that a whole lot. And now they've changed it up to cater more towards Super Mario Land by featuring some enemies and hieroglyphics based on the game. That is a super welcome addition in my opinion, though I know a lot of people miss the Mario 3 theming, which is totally fair, and as for the layout, it's very much unchanged compared to the original. However, a glider ramp and some more shortcuts have opened up, so I do enjoy the changes, especially when it helps make the 24 racers in a single race more tolerable. But sometimes I feel like the large size of the track kind of brings it down a few points since there's more of this super simplistic track. It is remade well here, however, I just feel like the track itself doesn't stand up to the more fun themed and layout focused tracks you can see in other courses. Number 27, Moo Moo Meadows. I just want to say this is the first time I've ever felt the feeling of why do we keep bringing this one back, Nintendo kind of tracks, and it doesn't help that Moo Moo Meadows is just so behind in terms of the times. I will not ignore that the new tricks and shortcuts that are still being discovered make for a really awesome time, but when looking at the track's layout, it doesn't change much from Mario Kart 8, and its additions rather just add a new ramp to go off of near the ending stretch. This could have been a new opportunity to try and reimagine Moo Moo Farms, but I guess playing it safe works too. Like, trust me, I don't hate Moo Moo Meadows, but realistically, this was a Mushroom Cup track back on the Wii, and while it's still fun, it's just heavily lacking inside of gameplay when you're not looking at Cow Skip. Number 26, Mario Bros. Circuit. Well, the beginning track in every Mario Kart game is never bound to be amazing, but I feel like over time they get better. Doesn't stop them from feeling kinda meh in the grand scheme of things, but you know what? I think Mario Bros. Circuit is a good track to introduce the game's mechanics, but it also isn't. It's very simple overall, and the opportunities to take crazy rail grinding shortcuts aren't very high, but this track, instead of being a typical grassy Mario Bros. Circuit, it goes for a desert style and has some very nice striking visuals and fun turns along the desert landscape. Is it very hard or exciting? Not really, no, but there are a vast amount of better turns and exciting opportunities to craft shortcuts here, rather than a track like Starview Peak. As a result, Mario Bros. Circuit becomes what I think is a great beginner track for a game that isn't very beginner friendly, and does an excellent job paving the way forward for the rest of the game's tracks. Number 25, Crown City. Now, Mario Kart Tour created the idea of city tracks and the idea of having a starting point and ultimately having each lap exploring various parts of the city. And now with Crown City, we get to see a more original design of a track since it isn't based off of a pre-existing location in the real world. Sadly, I feel like Crown City has more downsides than good, and those downsides truly outweigh the fun of the track. Like on one hand, you're driving down some alleys and up a skate park with some opportunities to take some mushroom cuts, or driving on walls and, grinding on rails for some extra speed. And then after you go to the main section of the city where there are a lot of chances to drive on the walls and rails, but it feels extra stale since it's only ever leading you to the same straightaway, and yet they have you race through this twice. Even then, the track is more so filled with slow straightaways with mild turns that it makes its fun sections and awesome shortcuts hard to get to when you aren't having fun. I think that Crown City should have been the ultimate city track, taking the good layouts from Tour's best city tracks and crafting something truly awesome, and sadly this one just feels underwhelming with a touch of classic high-speed variety that we have grown to love Mario Kart for. Number 24, Mario Circuit. Whoa! Mario Circuit from the SNES! How did they change it up this time? Simple answer is that they didn't do shit.
Oh my fucking... Fuck out of here!
But hey, that's before realizing that this version comprises the track designs from Mario Circuits 1, 2, and 3. This would be cool if these tracks weren't already super simple. However, I do like this change for the overall variety it gives. Even though these are probably the least interesting set of tracks, it does mean we get some good tight turns at times and a lot of chances to take mushroom cuts. But otherwise, there is a reason people demand that Mario Circuits just stop coming back. I mean, hell, Mario Circuit 3 being here at all feels wrong when it also just came back in Mario Kart 8 and even Wii. This could have been the opportunity to finally throw Mario Circuit 4 into the mix since it hasn't come back at all, but I guess a big compilation track is pretty cool in terms of a way to spice things up. Number 23, Sky High Sundae. Mario Kart Tour had original tracks, some were good and some were, well, Sky High Sundae. After Nintendo heard that nobody liked it in Mario Kart 8, I guess the only right move was to bring it back! Well, they didn't actually do a bad job here because while the simple layout still remains the same, overall taking one look around shows so many different rails and new walls added for some cool wall riding action, and man, the variety of tricks and moves you can pull off gives this track added flair and means that essentially every lap can be driven differently. They also have added some new off-road that you can drive over with mushroom cuts, and with the new mechanics you can even cut the entire final turn. Sure, it's the same track if driven without doing any tricks, but when giving some time and thought to the additions made for Mario Kart World style, it turns Sky High Sundae into a pretty enjoyable time. Number 22, Faraway Oasis. Alright, so remember when I said this?
Am I the only one who thinks that the desert tracks in Mario Kart have always just been the least interesting?
Well, that statement still stands here, but hey, Faraway Oasis isn't too bad. Granted, when looking at all the Nitro tracks here in Mario Kart World, it's easy to see some more than others as a wink wink, but in my personal opinion, I find Faraway Oasis to be the most forgettable of them all. Not for its poor layout, but because it's actually very fun with a good combination of water driving and trying to incorporate high and low paths to give added variety to the players. None of this is truly outstanding as it is still very beginner friendly with the opportunity to craft better shortcuts and tricks, but considering it feels like the toe dip into the bigger idea of a track with ton of places to trick, it isn't presented very well as Faraway Oasis lacks in solid theming and just kind of feels like another desert track with more water and pretty lighting. Even the main focus being animals running through the wild happens more on the intermission track leading up to this track, rather than the actual course. This isn't bad by any means, but it tends to fall behind with its theme and only starts to innovate with its mechanical side. Number 21, Peach Stadium. For a starting course for this game, I feel like Mario Bros. Circuit doesn't compare to Peach Stadium. Overall, we have a course based on Peach's castle, which has always been a beloved asset in the Mario Kart games, and the fact that the course is based around it and driving through and above it in the sky, it just feels so creative with beautiful visuals that truly make this feel like a stadium experience. The road kicks it up a notch too with some really good shortcuts you can find and create, giving some extra use to the boost jump by having many points where you can charge it up and ride up some walls or jump some pipes. Gives some extra personality to how you approach every lap and section. This track truly gives a sense of fun and adventure, and especially speed while you boost through the fun turns and use speed pads. You'll often see walls and rails just out of reach, giving incentive to experiment and try to discover all the different ways you can approach Peach Stadium. The only major critique is that for a big track based on a stadium, the challenge factor isn't too high. However, I still find the turns to be fun, and even if there isn't much challenge, it paves the way for creating your own experience and shortcuts. Number 20, Wario's Shipyard. Mario Kart World has a lot of strong gimmicks, and one of the new ones I don't see many talking about is the water racing. This might be because it's very similar, yet harder to control than the main driving, and compared to underwater racing, the argument of which is better can go either way. However, Wario's Shipyard has changed drastically from both versions to account for the water racing, and here we see that most of the track is just underneath us now, and now we're driving on top of the water. I did always find Wario's Shipyard a tad bit forgettable in the 3DS, so to see it here with the same layout and the new color palette, I find it personally a little bit better, especially since there are some fun high up pathways with being able to jump off the assets in the map, and with waves coming from the water, there's always a chance to hit some tricks. Some of the personality may have been lost, but I still feel like its smooth over gameplay really wraps the map up in a way where you can have a good time both expertly and by just driving regularly. Number 19, DK Pass. Mario Kart DS got a lot of love here as we surprisingly saw the return of DK Pass, and here in World, it is definitely another case of a course being more or less the same as its DS counterpart. However, you can definitely see where the polish was added so that you can drive it Mario Kart World style by jumping off of mountaintops and hitting poles to skip large gaps, as well as even giving it past its own ski resort theme, which oddly does feel out of place since DK Summit exists and it executes it a lot better, but I can appreciate the addition of this theme. You can argue that bringing this track back is a boring pick, and I don't blame you if you think so, but just take some time in free roam, and I find that it just gets better with every race you perform on it. Number 18, Acorn Heights. Talk about a fun theme with a super open track done well. Open tracks in Mario Kart aren't very good mechanically, considering items like bananas and shells are made worse as a result because everyone can just swerve around them and don't have to worry about any other opponents. But when looking at Acorn Heights, it's easy to see that every inch of the wide space is used perfectly to give several different paths and options for high and low driving. Various ramps and trick opportunities along with tall walls that are able to all be driven off of. The giant leaves make for fun gameplay and especially whimsical theming, so you almost feel tiny going past and on top of these giant assets and avoiding big acorns at the end. Talk about a track with tons of love, fun, and variety with opportunities to go fast put into it. Number 17, DK Spaceport. What a clever use for a course theme. The original Donkey Kong arcade game uses its layout to make for a really fun course where you'd expect to only be driving straight, except you'd be wrong! Motherfucker. Every floor you climb on this giant spaceport gives a new challenge of obstacles and new ways to go about traversing the platform. You might need to hit bounce pads or, grind on a set of rails you can go to avoid players and gain extra speed. The giant Robo DK might make an appearance here and there. And you'll even see yourself jumping across walls and taking shortcuts on every off-road available when climbing the floors. The music also, as a side note, changes to a different variation of the Donkey Kong motif to account for which floor you make your way up. There's so much color and personality here, and it goes on to make a surprisingly not boring track when it's almost seeming like every floor will just be a straight shot. Number 16, Boo Cinema. Boo Cinema is in fact cinema, as this track is without a doubt my favorite theme in the entire Mario Kart series. Driving through an abandoned movie theater overrun by ghosts before seemingly racing into the movie the ghosts are watching and racing on top of film reels and encountering ghostly spirits before shooting back out into the theater. Such a creative idea brought to life, and the layout itself is such a fun ride. While it tends to be one of the simpler track designs, it doesn't lack in having opportunities for getting creative with the rails presented, and some turns do tend to have a sharp edge to them, making for a track that, while it isn't the hardest, leaves a fun impact to every type of Mario Kart player, whether casual or more advanced. I think for me, the track itself shows its hand and potential, especially with the idea of entering a movie and even tricking off the film reels moving, but that potential overall just leaves me feeling wanting more. Number 15, Peach Beach. Nintendo themselves said that the retro tracks of this game would be reimagined and not just remade. And honestly, I feel like Peach Beach was the only track truly reimagined. Like, yes, the first lap still plays out the same way Peach Beach always did on the GameCube, but then starting up on lap 2 and into lap 3, we've got tons of elevation with the track diving into brand new areas and having tight corridors with walls to be ridden, and the ability to hop up and down platforms and doing tricks where it feels right. Now, of course, Peach Beach as a whole wasn't a bad track, but this feels like such a welcome addition, and with the added variety giving opportunities to do tricks everywhere and off the walls, this track begins to become a total playground for the tools you have. But yeah, the only unfortunate part comes from lap 3, where it feels more linear with some gliding and water driving, but in a very simplistic manner, but I personally find it to be a good way to let the chaos of the 24 racers come together. Peach Beach comes in with a pretty good lap 2 and 1, and then lap 3 is also there, but all in all, I enjoy this version a lot more than its previous. Number 14, Shy Guy Bazaar. Holy shit, they nailed this remake! Shy Guy Bazaar was already one of the best tracks on the 3DS, and here it feels just as good. The bazaar itself and aesthetic has been changed more to look like Sarasaland, which is another great callback, and the track feels more alive than ever with some added rail grinding spots just about everywhere, leading to a ton of new opportunities to get high ground and hit some boost panels that are newly added. Shy Guy Bazaar has always had such a fun layout with Shy Guys standing in the way to block paths, but you can always go over them, and there's even an opportunity to take a turn into a lower layer, giving tons of depth to a track where you're always driving around turns and obstacles, and it blends itself perfectly into Mario Kart World. Shy Guy Bazaar gets one of the best updates layout and visual wise, and it makes me so happy to see this track come back with such a high regard and a lot of love put into it. Number 13, Salty Salty Speedway. Talk about an awesome way to throw the new water driving mechanics into a course. Having canals in the middle of thin roads on some pretty fun turns throughout this massive course makes for such a fun gimmick with how slippery the water driving is. It can be difficult to get hang of the driving, and this track leans into that factor quite a lot, as normal driving can be hard to perform and almost feels slower to those who know how to drive in the water. There's also a lot of open ground where you can find jumps and nice off-roading spots, so the variety for those who don't know yet how to use the water driving can still enjoy their time. As a whole, I think tightly corridored tracks where you have to maneuver fast and careful to maintain speed makes for a really fun gameplay, and here you have tons of options on how to approach these corridors. Salty Salty Speedway comes in with a ton of high octane speed and challenge for those who are open to trying the more difficult shortcuts and paths, and I think it's a great addition to the roster. Number 12, Choco Mountain. Okay, to get it out of the way, because everyone has kinda just agreed on this, and honestly, I understand why, Choco Mountain in this game isn't a mountain and barely even resembles the look of the original. And yes, that's 100% true that it isn't a chocolate mountain, but is it bad that I kinda find this more fun? Like, yeah, the original is iconic in Mario Kart 64, but the look and the concept of an industrial plant producing chocolate run entirely by charging chucks is kinda awesome. Plus, the layout itself is as fun as ever, with the turns feeling more natural, but also retaining the original layout, including the windy turns and large jumps, but now with charging chucks everywhere to add some competition, and it'll always keep you looking ahead and keeping track of your moves, making for such a fun reimagining of this N64 track. Number 11, Whistle Stop Summit. Damn, the nitro tracks in this game continue to surprise me, because damn, Whistle Stop Summit, you turned one simple mechanic of rail grinding into such a fun track. First things first, the splitting paths and variety each path gives is actually insane, because you have paths splitting off with the individual rails near the beginning, and then you cut to the end, and the amount of tricks and turns and places you can go gets so far and wide, and all the opportunities come down to the player themselves, and this doesn't include the additional shortcuts and the added chaos of the train moving around the track that you'll have to avoid. But hands down, one of the most fun tracks and best introduction to rails is Whistle Stop Summit. Ride the rails or launch to your heart's content, and even perform some of the most insane wild riding shortcuts I've ever seen. No matter what you choose, this track is never raced the same each time and gives so much to play around with. Number 10, Great Question Block Ruins. Gotta say, for a temple brought to ruins high above the sky, we've got such a cool track here to race on with some absolutely insane tech you can pull off. Like seriously, looking at the current world record shows some crazy precise mushroom cuts and rail grinds just to save a few seconds. And of course, there's the viral end segment shortcut where you hop off the clouds to walls and back onto the track, and it's all so crazy. with everything you can pull off fully here and there. Needless to say that looking past that, we've also just got another track that is open with a ton of paths going high and going low, but none feel less fast than the other. I can happily say that every path that splits off is a path to be mastered, and each are super fun to learn, especially with that end segment. The aesthetic of this track is also really great, as the ruins themselves feel like they could have been here forever, and the giant question block itself makes for a very memorable set piece. When looking at the track all together, it makes for a fun race and a fun challenge when experimenting with all the tight jumps and rails spread throughout the map. Number 9. Dandelion Depths. Talk about an underrated track. Wow, I hardly see anybody talking about Dandelion Depths. And part of me doesn't understand why, because this track is so lively and has such a fun layout that may not be the most difficult, but man, if it isn't a joy to drive on. The turns and splitting paths you can get to on this track come in naturally as you shift from the high parts of the track down to the depths, where you get to do some maneuvering on the water before rocketing out back up to the surface with some boost pads, so long as you don't slam into any walls, of course. I gotta say, I like this track seriously encourages the use of boost jumping and the water racing, as there are a ton of spots that are just out of reach without them. This course brings across what may not be a tough challenge, but most definitely fast and fun action-filled gameplay, giving a ton of chances to test out this game's tech. Number 8. Bowser's Castle. Getting down to the Ire brings us to a brand new rendition of Bowser's Castle inside of an active volcano. This makes for one of the coolest looking Bowser's Castles in the Mario Kart series, and in terms of layout, this really feels like a test to see if you can handle sharp turns, jumps, and transitions at a high speed with this new engine, and it is so much fun to drive across. Maybe this is recency bias due to this being a new engine nobody has fully mastered yet, but the track does bring across a great deal of skill and really has you keeping your head and mind focused at all times to keep up with the course and the chaos, and don't forget the added shortcuts if you can. The usual obstacles of a Bowser's Castle are present, but aren't what keep this track feeling so electric, but rather the track shifting from section to section so quickly, and the fact that failing to stay on the course will result in either falling in lava and losing time, or just straight up falling off the volcano. In terms of a final challenge that feels memorable and hard, this feels like a great step to take for Bowser's Castle, and if it wasn't for a certain other track on this list, without a doubt be the best of all finale courses in Mario Kart World's Grand Prix. Such an awesome course. Number 7. Wario Stadium. Alright, talk about a glow, because what the ass was this shit back on Mario Kart 64? Did Nintendo really think this was fun? Now maybe if it was brought back with the added trick system, and maybe if most of this crazy long track was cut down in size, it would make for a more fun and proper stadium course experience. And yes, they turned this mess into something truly fun. We still have a ton of fun turns and jumps, but now with the new trick system insisting on performing multiple tricks after every jump to maintain and increase speed. Talk about a great layout this has turned into, because you can't drive straight for long without making it to a turn, with more ramps you need to hit, so you can truly get maximum speed from every section before hitting a greatly large jump over the entire stadium before landing back down into the final stretch to the finish line. For a reimagining, I think everyone can agree, taking out the disgustingly long length and polishing up the parts of the track that remain for a more fast-paced experience, where you are always flying through the air, a remake that really makes Wario Stadium feel like a racetrack, and I think it makes for an awesome course here. Number 6. Rainbow Road. Well, for a finale course, we have been presented with maybe not the hardest Rainbow Road, but damn it, the most memorable and magical one for sure, with a layout long and fun that gives you opportunities to practice all types of driving over the course of a 5-lap experience, where there's no slowing down or driving straight. The track will speed up constantly, even when shifting into different sections, and speaking of these sections, they all leave such an awesome impact between rainbow sections. Driving across bioluminescent waters in space before driving on some splitting rainbow roads towards a giant rainbow space station where you'll avoid womps, before finally breaking into a final stretch where you'll see characters from Grand Prix and colors shooting out everywhere while you try to race and hit boost panels without steering off the track. There's constant splitting pathways everywhere where you can even jump onto other parts of the track, and while a long rainbow road might seem bad in retrospect, dude, this is so cool! The layout more than makes up for it by being full of action and variety, and best of all, speed. A rainbow road to be remembered forever for such an incredible experience and an amazing spectacle from beginning to end. Number 5. Dino Dino Jungle. Damn, crazy to think that the original Dino Dino Jungle on GameCube just didn't have any dinosaurs besides one, and now we're here and they've added several where you can drive on them and trick off of them as well, and since they are just randomly running throughout the map, it adds a ton of unpredictability. Along with that is just a really solid recreation of Dino Jungle with a bunch of laboratory elements added to make it look a little more like Jurassic Park, surprisingly. With the theming on point, we get a solid track with cool jumps and elevation as you move from outside roaming with the dinosaurs to driving inside the giant facility, where you can either wall ride to the upper layer or remain inside the facility grounds and drive past more dinosaurs. Feels like Nintendo added everything they needed to, and the final additions added to the theme made for an awesome layout and an already great track become fully realized in this engine. Number 4, Airship Fortress. A track requested to be brought back so much, and it finally arrives here in Mario Kart World after 13 years of waiting, and man, did they fucking nail it here. Airship Fortress is not only such a cool themed course taking place in the airships you explore in Mario Bros. 3, but also has the added fact of just having a really stellar layout, where you constantly are bombarded with enemies as you traverse these tight corridors, and it's all perfectly replicated here, only improved by the addition of a ton of grind rails, whether it be near the beginning or even down near the actual hallways when avoiding traps. There seems to be a ton more options for cutting turns and sections with these added rails, giving a new sense of skill to this track, and I'm all here for it. You might argue that a lot of the track getting cut down by these shortcuts is kinda lame and means you won't be driving on the actual course, but I don't know, I find it kinda fun. It's always changing and bringing a fun new deal of challenge, and it shows that this track has always been a fun time, and waiting till now to bring it back with the new changes felt like such a good choice, because this version is one of the best we've received of Airship Fortress, and I don't know if that same energy would have been accomplished if it was brought back in Mario Kart 8. So this makes for such an awesome selection here with a ton of new opportunities to explore and play around with it. Number 3, Cheep Cheep Falls. Now this right here is by far the best use of water racing, because damn, if Cheep Cheep Falls wasn't one of the coolest and most difficult tracks to get the hang of, the fact that you start the track working your way up and can even use boost jumps to get higher for added pathways makes for a course where you actually feel like you're going on an adventure, as you then go down from that height to racing swiftly through a flowing river while Cheep Cheeps barrage you at every chance they can. While water racing may not be perfect yet, it truly improves the track so much, since you really have to learn how to maneuver your kart down this crazy river to try not to hit any walls, as well as the Cheep Cheep, and there's also a great deal of rail jumps you can hit if you angle yourself right. Adding these walls and turns gives a lot of incentive to truly learn how the boost jumping works, and in my opinion, I just love that so much, because these alternate paths are super unique and allow you to separate from the pack of players, but even when racing normally, you'll find it pretty fast and a challenging course to keep up with a lot of jumps and ever-changing areas. Not to mention that this course is brought together by its excellent theming, with the course taking a lot of inspiration from Japanese architecture, making for a really memorable experience to play on each race. Number 2, Toad's Factory. It's finally here! Toad's Factory from Mario Kart Wii, and while I was worrying if the track would hold up after all this time as a fast obstacle-filled factory with great music, I am more than happy to report that the worry is gone, because wow, this is by far my favorite remake and the best use of mixing old layouts with new mechanics. And it really shows, as while the track may still have all the boost panels constantly switching so you have to stay on your toes and jumps everywhere, it's also combined with some hidden rails and brand new sections exclusive to those who are able to boost jump up the walls. And sure, these sections may not be required to go the fastest, but they really do bring a great bit of variety and crazy fun factor especially. There's also seemingly more item boxes than the original, giving more chaos alongside the fucking 24 racers we now have. And with the mechanics blending in perfectly with the original layout, it's easy to see why Toad's Factory here is better than it's ever been before, and it seems like it'll only get better from here on out with how many possible shortcuts there are. Number 1, Dry Bones Burnout. Without a doubt, the best track of Mario Kart World and the best track to push the game's mechanics and players' thinking to its limits is the new Nitro track of Dry Bones Burnout. And wow, what a spectacle this track is. Taking what could have been a generic lava and desert themed track by getting super creative and adding the Day of the Dead styled music and decorations throughout the entire track, giving a nice colorful look to a pretty nice looking lava track, and it makes for such a memorable looking track. Until you play the layout, and wow, they did not short out here, because the amount of different routes you can take becomes crazy here. Even off where you'd think there's just off-road, no, you actually have some hidden rails you can ride, and the opportunities there are super crazy with how crafty you can get, along with the factor that you can hop from track to track with boost jumps is great. Some paths are bound to be slower than others, but each tends to feel very unique, and in a game where people complain about driving straight too much, it's easy to see that there's none of that here. The track ultimately brings up all the possibilities every chance it gets with all that you can accomplish, and it's made even better by the fact that if you mess up, there will be consequences. As sometimes it might just be a patch of off-road that you have to get through, but sometimes you'll just go straight into lava and have to make up for your mistakes unless you have a mushroom to boost over the lava, which also makes for a lot of satisfying shortcuts and really wraps a perfect bow on what I believe to be the most technically advanced and variety-filled track in all of Mario Kart World, pushing the possibilities to the limits of what you think and what you can accomplish. These were my official picks for the worst and especially best Mario Kart World tracks. Thank you all for watching my picks and rankings throughout this fucking half-hour long video. What the fuck? And most of all, I hope you all enjoyed. Please be sure to check the description down below as all gameplay used in this video will be credited. Go give some love to these awesome gamers as they deserve all the credit, not me. I was just trying to make a funny video. I don't know. If there are any other future video ideas you guys have for me, please leave them in the comments down below, and I'll be back soon with another video for you guys eventually. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys later.